She told me her weekend trip was just the girls. But until a stranger sent me the real photos, I had no idea how wrong I was about my marriage. And if you'd met me a year ago, you would have called my life solid, ordinary, maybe even enviable in that quiet suburban way. My name is Jason Miller, 44 years old, project manager for a construction firm in Denver. The guy who shows up early, pays the bills on time, grills on Sundays. And never once imagined that the woman I trusted most would look me in the eye, smile, and say, "Stop worrying, it's just the girls," while packing clothes that didn't match the story. My wife Hannah is 39, a marketing manager for a cosmetics company, smart, sharp, one of those women who can walk into a room and make it feel like a photo in a lifestyle magazine. Everything neat, intentional, curated. We've been married 12 years, no kids by choice, just the two of us in our goofy lab, Cooper, in a three-bedroom house in Highlands Ranch with a view of the mountains if you squint from the upstairs window. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours: early morning coffee on the patio, pizza nights on the couch, long drives on weekends when she wanted to get out of the city for a minute, and I liked the feeling of the highway under my tires. For most of those years, if you'd asked me about Hannah, I would have told you she was my best friend, my partner, the one who knew exactly how I took my coffee and when to leave me alone after a long day. I trusted her completely, so much that when the first red flag appeared, I didn't see it for what it was. I just folded it neatly and stored it away with the rest of the details of our life. It started with the girls' night that turned into the girls' weekend. We were eating dinner one Tuesday, sheet pan chicken and roasted vegetables, her recipe, my effort, when she casually said, "By the way, the girls and I are planning a little trip in a couple of weeks, just a weekend. We found this cute cabin near Santa Fe." She said it like she was asking me to pass the salt. I looked up from my plate. "A trip?" I repeated, more surprised than concerned. She grinned, that bright, charming smile that had pulled me in years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. "Yeah. You know how crazy work has been? We just want a couple of days away. Wine, hot tub, trashy movies, complaining about life. Very glamorous." I chuckled. "Who's going?" She ticked off names on her fingers. "You know, the usual suspects, Jen, of course, maybe Megan if she can get her mom to watch the kids, and Allison might come if she's not traveling for work." All women I'd met at least once. No new names, no obvious reason to doubt her. Still, something about the way she didn't look up immediately when she listed them made a tiny knot form in my stomach. A knot I ignored because that's what trusting husbands do. We file away the twinges and assume love will outrun our fear. Over the next 2 weeks, the trip became background noise in our lives. Amazon packages with just some outfits for the trip, new bikini bottoms, my old ones are stretched out, a manicure appointment, a fresh haircut with more layers than I'd seen on her in years. "You're really going all in for this girl's weekend," I joked one night as she tried on a dress that looked more suited for a rooftop bar than a cabin in the woods. She twirled once, checking her reflection in the full-length mirror. "Jen says we're going to take cute photos. I can't show up looking like a troll." She laughed, but her eyes darted sideways, watching my reaction like she was measuring it. That was the second flag, small again, easy to shrug off. Then came the phone habits. Hannah had always been pretty relaxed with her phone, leaving it on the counter, asking me to answer if she was in the shower, rolling her eyes at people who couldn't go 10 seconds without checking their notifications. But in the days leading up to the trip, her phone became an extension of her hand. Screen face down, notifications changed to notification instead of showing previews. She laughed at messages she wouldn't explain and took calls in the hallway, throwing out lines like, "God, Megan, you're so dramatic," but never putting the phone on speaker like she used to. The more I noticed, the more my brain tried to help her, generating excuses. "She's stressed, she's organizing the trip, maybe someone's going through something personal." I wanted to believe that, so I did. The night before she left, I sat at the kitchen table paying bills while she packed in the bedroom, music playing softly from her phone. At one point, she came out holding two dresses, both tighter than what she usually wore around me, both cut a little lower. "Okay, real talk," she said, leaning in the doorway. "Which one looks better, the black one or the red one?" I frowned slightly. "For the cabin," she rolled her eyes playfully. "Jason, just because we're in a cabin doesn't mean we're not allowed to look cute. We're not going to the moon." I pointed to the black one. "That one." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "See, this is why I keep you around," before disappearing back into the bedroom. On the morning of the trip, she left early, kissing me twice at the front door, suitcase rolling behind her. "Don't forget to feed Cooper actually on time," she called over her shoulder. "And don't live on frozen pizza while I'm gone." "No promises," I called back, trying to keep it light as she climbed into her Uber. As the car pulled away, she texted me a heart emoji and "love you," and for a moment the knot in my stomach loosened. Maybe I was being ridiculous. Maybe it really was just the girls. Still, that first night without her felt strange. The house was too quiet. Cooper kept checking the door like she might appear at any second. I made myself a frozen lasagna, turned on a game, and tried not to imagine her sitting in a hot tub somewhere, laughing with her friends, drinking wine, completely unaware that her husband was sitting on the couch wondering when he became the guy who second-guessed his wife's girls' trip. She texted me a picture around 9 p.m. A group selfie of four women, hair blown by what looked like patio wind, wine glasses raised, a string of lights in the background. She circled herself with a heart and wrote, "Proof of life, see, just the girl's winking face." I zoomed in. Sure enough, Jen, Megan, and someone I assumed was Allison, though I hadn't seen her in a while. It looked normal, harmless, exactly the kind of photo you'd expect from a weekend like that. I told myself to relax. The next day I went for a hike, took Cooper to the dog park, caught up on some work. She texted me sporadically, "We're going into town. Jin almost fell in the hot tub face with tears of joy. You'd hate the wine we tried. It fit the story, and yet the knot stayed. It was like my instincts were whispering something my brain refused to translate. The moment everything changed wasn't dramatic on the surface. It was Saturday night around 8:30 and I was flipping through channels when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored its spam, probably, but a second buzz came immediately after, then a third rapid, insistent. I picked it up expecting a car warranty scam or some discount code I didn't need. Instead, I saw a single line, "You don't know me, but you need to see this." Underneath the message sat three images, each one blurred with that soft preview effect my phone uses until you tap to open them. My heart stuttered, my thumb hovered over the screen. For a few seconds I just sat there, the TV blaring something forgettable in the background, Cooper snoring at my feet, my entire life balanced on whether or not I swiped open those pictures. Hannah's words echoed in my head, "Stop worrying, it's just the girls," bumping up against the unknown sender's message. "You need to see this, trust or truth, comfort or reality." Slowly, carefully, I tapped the first photo. And what I saw staring back at me from that stranger's camera lens shattered the last pieces of the story I'd been telling myself about my wife, her trip, and the marriage I thought I understood. When I opened that first photo, my entire world tilted, not violently, not with cinematic explosiveness, but with a quiet, nauseating shift that made my vision narrow as I stared at the screen, the air thinning around me like the room had dropped into a vacuum, because the picture showed the very same patio lights from Hannah's group selfie, same angle, same table, same string of warm bulbs. But this time the frame widened, revealing two people who absolutely were not part of any girl's trip. Hannah sitting beside a man I'd never seen before, laughing with her head tilted back, wine glass in hand. Her other hand resting on his thigh as casually as if she'd done it 1,000 times, and the worst part wasn't the touch, it was the expression, the relaxed, glowing smile she hadn't worn around me in months, maybe years, like she'd packed it up along with that black dress she claimed was for cabin photos. My stomach twisted, my hands went cold, and I tapped the second image with the dread of a man watching his marriage peel open like a wound, revealing infected truth beneath the bandage. That photo was worse. Him, brown hair, athlete's build, maybe late 30s, leaning in toward her, whispering something in her ear while she covered her mouth like a teenager trying not to burst into giggles, and her body angled toward him, knees touching his, the kind of body language that didn't belong to strangers or friends or coworkers. It was the posture of familiarity, of desire, of a relationship that hadn't just started yesterday. I felt like someone had punched through my ribs and ripped something out with bare hands, but I still wasn't prepared for the third photo. The one that broke something in me permanently, Hannah standing at the railing overlooking the dark trees, her silhouette framed by the patio lights, and that man behind her, arms around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder like they owned the night, like they owned each other, and there was my wife, the woman who told me not to worry. Leaning back into him in a way she hadn't leaned into me in years, my vision blurred. I didn't realize I'd stopped breathing until I had to gasp in air just to stay upright. Cooper lifted his head from the floor, ears pricked, sensing something was wrong. My phone buzzed again, another message from the unknown number. "There's more if you need it," they wrote. "I thought you deserved to know, you seem like a good man." I stared at the words, unsettled by the idea that someone, some stranger, had seen this happening before I had judged me as the last person who knew the truth about his own life. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, trembling, unsure what to say, unsure if I even wanted more, until I finally typed, "Who are you?" The reply came quickly. "Someone at the resort who doesn't tolerate cheaters." I heard her say it was a girl's trip. It was. Resort, not cabin, not woods. Not Santa Fe, a resort. My heart thudded painfully. I typed again, "Where are they?" The response, "Taos Valley Lodge, room 214. Then another message, "She's with him right now." My mind fractured into disbelief, rage, sorrow, and something colder, clarity, the kind that comes when fantasies collapse and only truth remains. I should have called her immediately, demanded an explanation, screamed, cursed, asked how she'd done this to me. But instead, I felt myself enter a strange, controlled stillness, like the mindset I used at work when solving a crisis: detach, assess, plan. I didn't respond to the stranger. Instead, I stood slowly, my body moving like it belonged to someone else, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink, stared at the tile floor while the refrigerator hummed in the background like white noise cushioning the blow. I went back to the couch and forced myself to reopen the photos, not because I wanted to torture myself, but because I needed to see clearly, no denial, no softening the details, no excuses. There in undeniable pixels was the woman I'd married, sharing intimacy with a man whose name I didn't know. My brain tried to offer explanations. Maybe it wasn't physical yet, maybe it was just emotional, maybe she lost herself for a moment, maybe the angle was misleading. But the photos crushed each excuse like fragile glass under a steel boot. I sat there for almost an hour, scrolling between the images, reading the messages again, feeling the ache in my chest grow heavier, deeper, until it felt like my entire ribcage was collapsing inward. Finally, the stillness inside me cracked and questions erupted in waves. How long had this been going on? Who was he? Why did she lie so easily? Why didn't I see it? Why did she smile like that for him and not for me? Did she ever love me the way I thought she did? Was our life together just something she tolerated until something better came along? The questions burned, acidic and relentless. My hands shook so violently I had to set the phone down. Cooper nuzzled my knee, sensing my distress, and I placed my hand on his head automatically, grateful for his presence, for something in my life that wasn't built on deception. When the clock hit midnight, my phone buzzed again, a text from Hannah. Miss, you read. The emoji felt like a knife, mocking, cruel, careless. I stared at the message until my eyes stung. She was probably lying beside someone else when she sent it, or maybe she'd stepped away from him for 10 seconds to maintain her illusion of a faithful wife. That hurt worse than the photos. The ease, the audacity, the casualness of her betrayal. I didn't reply. I didn't trust myself to respond without revealing that I knew everything, and something inside me, something I didn't recognize, whispered that exposing the truth right now would be too easy, too merciful. Instead, I needed to understand the whole picture. I needed to gather information before making my next move. If she could lie so convincingly, so thoroughly, then I could learn from her example, not to deceive but to strategize. At 1:12 a.m., unable to sit still any longer, I opened my laptop and started searching Taos Valley Lodge. The photos online matched the string lights in the images. I checked the resort map. Yes, the patio in the pictures was accessible only to certain suites. My heart pounded. I zoomed in on the pictures again, studying reflections in windows, details on the patio furniture, even the wine label. I wasn't looking as a husband anymore. I was looking as an investigator. And the more I looked, the more I realized something chilling. Hannah wasn't new at this. She moved too naturally with him. Her posture was too familiar, her smile too easy. This wasn't a fling. This was a relationship, a secret one. That knowledge settled in my body like a concrete block, heavy, immovable. Around 2:30 a.m., the unknown number texted one last time. I won't send more unless you ask, but if you want proof, real proof, I have it. I didn't answer, not yet. I set my phone face down, turned off the lights, sat in the dark, listening to Cooper breathe while my mind replayed 12 years of marriage through a new lens. Every girls' night, every late meeting, every weekend she claimed she needed space. The patterns emerged like constellations, all the signs I hadn't seen before glowing painfully bright now. That night I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. I stayed awake until dawn broke pale and weak over the neighborhood, and in that thin first light I made myself a quiet, devastating promise. I was done being blindsided. I would learn the whole truth. I would uncover every detail, and when the time came I would decide exactly how this marriage ended, not in chaos, not in rage, but with knowledge, precision, and consequences she would never forget. The sunrise that morning felt like an insult, soft gold spreading across the living room walls while my entire world sat in the shadow of what I'd seen. And as I stood there holding a mug of coffee I couldn't taste, watching the sky turn colors it had no right to flaunt, a cold clarity settled into me, not rage, not panic, but something sharper and more deliberate, the mindset of a man who has finally stopped trying to believe comforting lies. I knew I needed information, real information, not assumptions or half-formed theories. So I grabbed my laptop, opened a blank notepad file, and began typing a timeline: her late nights, her sudden gym habits, her phone secrecy, the girls' trips that didn't include photos of girls. And that week back in August when she claimed her boss sent her to Chicago, but never brought back receipts from the hotel, I later discovered wasn't even in her company's travel system. Clues I hadn't let myself acknowledge until last night forced me to stare them down like evidence in a courtroom. Cooper nudged my arm, sensing my tension, and I instinctively reached down to pet him before focusing again on the screen. I needed names, dates, receipts, anything that could tell me who that man was and how long he'd been in my wife's life. So I opened her email account, when she'd left logged in on my laptop months ago and probably forgotten, and scanned through folders that looked untouched at first glance but slowly revealed inconsistencies. Digital receipts from spas she'd never mentioned, reservation confirmations for restaurants 2 hours from Denver on nights she claimed she was working late. And then I found something that made my pulse spike, a forwarded email from RB dated 6 months ago with the subject line "Same place next week." And though the message itself had been deleted, the thread indicated multiple previous conversations, all gone, all wiped clean. RB, who was RB? I searched her contacts. No RB in her phone, no RB in her email, not obvious anyway, but as I dug deeper, I discovered a hidden folder called Work Archives. A harmless name that likely masked something less innocent. Inside were two saved documents: Q2 marketing plan and brand strategy notes, both of which opened to blank pages, and that was enough to tell me she wasn't clumsy, she was intentional, she'd created camouflage. That realization hit hard because it meant the affair wasn't impulsive or accidental. It had structure. It had time behind it. She had built space in her life for it, and worst of all, she believed I'd never look. Around noon, after hours of combing through digital crumbs, I finally texted the unknown number. I want proof, all of it. The reply came in less than a minute. Are you sure? I typed back, yes. They sent a photo, a close-up of the man's face, smiling at the camera while holding two drinks, Hannah's hand visible in the corner of the frame as if she'd just taken her fingers off his wrist. The stranger's message followed. His name is Ryan, works in private fitness coaching. They've been meeting for months. She told him she's unhappy in her marriage. My jaw clenched so hard I felt it click. Why are you doing this? I asked. The reply came with a tone I could almost hear, because she lied to everyone at the resort, said she was escaping an emotionally neglectful husband, but I overheard her laughing about how easy it is to travel without you questioning her, thought you deserved the truth. I reread that message 4 times until the words blurred: emotionally neglectful husband me. The man who canceled overtime to attend her work events, who cooked when she worked late, who planned date nights she often skipped, who listened when she ranted about coworkers. The knife twisted deeper. Do you know how long? I typed. 6 or 7 months at least, they replied. I sat back staring at the wall, letting that sink in, letting it spread through me like poison turning into resolve. 6 or 7 months meant this man had likely been around during moments that belonged to us, our anniversary, the holiday party I attended alone because she had a migraine, the weekend she claimed she needed space and quiet and rented a cabin alone. I felt the betrayal morph into something cold and focused. I knew what I needed now, confirmation I could hold in my hands. I opened another tab and searched her bank account, our shared one, and there they were, payments to Angel Peak Fitness, charges tagged as consultation fees, recurring every 2 weeks. I Googled it. A boutique personal training studio run by my stomach dropped Ryan Baxter. RB, I stared at the screen, hands gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles went white. She hadn't just cheated, she used our money to fund it, to fund him. A dark laugh escaped my throat, humorless and sharp. It wasn't funny, but the audacity was almost theatrical. I took screenshots of everything, the photos, the receipts, the messages, and saved them to a locked drive. If she'd built a secret world, then I needed a record of its architecture. By early afternoon, my mind had shifted again. I no longer felt like a victim drowning in confusion. I felt like a man constructing a blueprint. Every betrayal had a trail, I just had to follow it. I grabbed my keys, told Cooper I'd be back, and drove to the studio Angel Peak Fitness just to see it, to see the place where my wife had spent hours pretending to work on herself while actually breaking us apart. The building sat in a strip of upscale shops, the kind of place that catered to wealthy clients who liked personalized attention. Through the window, I saw equipment, sleek lighting, minimalist design, and a framed photo on the wall of Ryan himself, smiling at the camera like the kind of man who assumed life would always hand him what he wanted. I didn't go in. I didn't confront him, not yet. I just stood outside long enough to feel the weight of reality solidify before walking back to my car. As I sat in the driver's seat, I thought about my next move. Should I show up at their resort, burst in, and expose everything? It was tempting, God, it was tempting, but immediate explosions rarely win wars. Strategy does, timing does, control does, and if Hannah had spent months orchestrating lies, then I could spend a few days orchestrating truth. On the drive home, I called my friend Mark, a private investigator I'd worked with indirectly through my company when reviewing contractor fraud cases. I need surveillance, I told him. Discreet, immediate, I'll explain in person. He didn't ask questions, Mark was loyal like that, and we met at a diner 20 minutes later. I handed him the photos, the messages, the timeline, everything. He studied them with a professional calm I envied. You want me to track her or him? He asked. Both, I said, but not yet, they're out of state. I need eyes when she gets back. I need to know how deep this goes. He nodded. You want divorce evidence? I hesitated. I wasn't ready to say the word out loud yet, even though part of me had already accepted it. I want truth, I finally said, and I want options. He understood. We planned the details, vehicles, schedules, documentation, and by the time we finished, the sun had set, leaving the parking lot washed in cold blue shadows. At home, the silence felt heavier than before, thick with intent. My phone buzzed at 9:18 p.m., a text from Hannah. We're watching movies, miss you. Be home tomorrow afternoon, red heart, the heart emoji again, the performance again. I stared at that message with a new sensation rising through me, not heartbreak, not anger, but power. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, the imbalance between us shifted. She thought she was returning to the same husband she left behind. She had no idea that I knew everything, no idea I had proof. No idea that her world was about to change. I typed back, can't wait to see you, drive safe. Then I placed my phone next to the folder on my desk labeled evidence, and felt something settle deep inside me. Not peace, peace comes later. This was resolve, focus, direction. She had built her story on lies. I would dismantle it with truth, one piece at a time. When Sunday afternoon finally rolled around and I heard the familiar rumble of the garage door opening, I felt strangely calm, like a man who'd rehearsed his lines, checked his marks, and was now just waiting for the curtain to rise. And when Hannah stepped into the house dragging her suitcase, wrapped in that oversized cardigan she always wore on road trips, hair pulled into a messy bun that was undoubtedly intentional, she looked exactly like the woman who had left 2 days earlier. Except now I could see the invisible layers, every lie, every half-truth, every moment she'd chosen him over me tucked neatly between the folds of her clothes. Hey you, she said softly, setting her bag down and crossing the room with a tired smile. Miss me? I kissed her cheek, I didn't flinch. Yeah, I said, because that was still true in a way that hurt. How was it the girls survive? She launched into a summary, wine games, Megan's meltdown over her mother-in-law, some joke about Allison's snoring, and I listened, nodding, cataloging each fabricated detail like additional lines on an already crowded spreadsheet of deception. When she finished, I asked casually, no crazy stories, no secret admirers, no surprise guests, she laughed, a little too high-pitched. Please, Jason, we're not 25 anymore. I smiled back like I believed her, like my phone didn't hold photographic proof that she'd spent the weekend in the arms of a man named Ryan at a resort she'd never mentioned by name. Glad you had fun, I said. You look tired. Good tired, she replied, slipping off her shoes. I just need a shower and then maybe we can order something. I haven't had decent food all weekend. Sure, I said. Take your time. I'm just going to finish up some work stuff. She disappeared upstairs, and as I listened to the shower turn on, I sat at my desk in the small office, staring at the folder labeled evidence, feeling the weight of the choice I was about to make. I could confront her right now one-on-one in a storm of how could you, and why him, and do you know what you've done? Or I could wait, follow through with the plan I'd started with Mark, and bring the entire story into the light in a way that left no room for gaslighting or revision. I chose the second path not because I wanted to humiliate her, but because I knew how easily people twist narratives when cornered in private. Truth needed witnesses, not the whole world, not online, not in some vindictive public shaming, but the right people, the ones whose opinions had shaped the story she told about our marriage. That night over takeout in a movie, I let her talk. I let her lean against me on the couch like she always did after trips. I didn't pull away, and that was maybe the strangest part. I still knew how to be her husband even when I knew she hadn't fully been my wife. When she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, I stared at the TV without seeing it, thinking about the text I'd sent earlier in the day. Family dinner, our place next Saturday, need to share some news. Her mother responded first with enthusiastic exclamation points. Her sister Chloe wrote, "Ooh, mysterious, I'm in. I invited my brother, Matt." Even asked our mutual friend Liam, the one who'd introduced us years ago. Hannah thought it was about a promotion. She'd been hinting for months about big things coming at my company, nudging me to take more leadership roles. Let her think that, I decided. Let her walk into that dinner expecting one reality while another waited patiently at the table. In the days leading up to Saturday, Mark did exactly what I'd asked. He followed her, not every second, just enough to establish a pattern. On Tuesday, she left for a late meeting and went straight to Angel Peak Fitness, where Ryan was waiting outside, leaning against his car like a man who assumed the world owed him comfort. They didn't go in, they drove away together. On Thursday, she claimed she was grabbing drinks with coworkers but met Ryan instead at a dimly lit bar on the other side of town, sliding into a booth as if she'd done it 100 times, their knees touching under the table. Mark's photos were clean, time-stamped, undeniable. When he emailed them to me with a simple subject line, "Per your request," I felt something in me finally stop fighting the idea that this might be salvageable in the way I used to imagine. You can forgive a wound that happens once. It's harder to forgive a wound someone keeps opening with the same knife. Saturday came. I got up early, cleaned the house, wiping counters, straightening cushions, setting the dining table, placing plates where plates would be needed, leaving one chair empty for a man who didn't know his own role in the story was about to be exposed. Hannah fluttered around the kitchen, humming, doing that nervous hosting thing she always did when her family came over, triple-checking the roast, rearranging the napkins, asking for my opinion on the wine pairing like we were just any couple throwing a normal dinner party. "You're being very calm about this," she said at one point, stepping close to adjust my collar. "You usually get stressed when we host." "I'm feeling very clear," I replied, and she smiled, misreading the answer. At 6 sharp, the doorbell rang. Her parents arrived first, bringing dessert. Her mother hugged us both, chattering about traffic and the weather. Her father clapped me on the shoulder, asked about work. 10 minutes later, Chloe burst in with her boyfriend, followed by my brother and Liam. The house filled with voices, jokes, the clink of glassware, the smell of food. Hannah moved through the room with practiced ease, pouring wine, laughing, tucking hair behind her ear. Watching her, I understood how easily she'd fooled me for months. She knew how to perform. "So," her mother said over appetizer plates, "what's this big news? Hannah says you've been working on something huge." All eyes turned toward me. Hannah squeezed my hand under the table, excitement in her eyes, pride too. For a second, I almost couldn't breathe. Then I exhaled, let go of her hand gently, and stood, picking up the small remote I'd placed on the table earlier. "Actually," I said, voice steady, "the news isn't about work, it's about my marriage." The room quieted instantly, all conversation dropping away as everyone looked between us. Hannah's smile faltered. "Jason," she said slowly, "what's going on?" I didn't answer her directly, not yet. Instead, I walked to the TV mounted on the wall and pressed a button. The screen lit up, the photo viewer opening to the folder I'd queued. The first image appeared, the resort patio, the string lights, Hannah and Ryan at the table, her hand resting on his thigh. Her mother gasped. Chloe's eyes went wide. My brother swore under his breath. Hannah made a strangled sound that didn't quite become a word, one hand flying to her mouth. "I received this last weekend," I said calmly, "along with others." I clicked the remote, the second photo, Ryan leaning in, whispering in her ear, the third, his arms around her at the railing. "These were taken at a resort in Taos," I continued, "on a trip that I was told was just the girls." No one spoke, even the air felt like it was holding its breath. Hannah stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Jason, stop," she pleaded, voice shaking. "Please, we can talk about this privately." I turned to face her, remote still in hand. "We've been talking privately for months," I said, still controlled, still calm. "You just weren't telling me the truth, so now the truth gets company." Chloe stood slowly, eyes bouncing between us. "Hannah, is this real?" she whispered. Hannah's composure broke. Tears spilled over as she shook her head, then nodded, then shook it again like her mind couldn't decide which reality to cling to. "It's not what it looks like," she started, that old cliché, but I held up a hand, not sharply, just firmly. "It's exactly what it looks like," I corrected, "and there's more." I clicked again. Mark's photos appeared, Hannah outside the fitness studio meeting Ryan by his car, another of the bar, the booth, their shoulders touching, the timestamps visible in the corner. "He's her trainer," I said, "has been for months. Their relationship isn't new." Hannah's father, usually quiet, spoke for the first time, voice low and pained. "Hannah, tell me this is some kind of mistake." She sank back into her chair, defeated, mascara streaking as she finally whispered, I messed up. The understatement of the century. I didn't gloat, didn't raise my voice, didn't call her names or list her sins like charges. I just let the images cycle once more before turning off the TV. I invited you all here, I said, addressing the room, because I won't live a life where truth is something we whisper in the dark while pretending everything's fine in the light. I needed witnesses not for spectacle but for clarity, for me, for her, for anyone who's been told a story that isn't real. I turned to Hannah. I know about Ryan, I know about the trips, I know about the studio payments. I know it's been going on for at least 6 months, maybe longer. I'm not here to argue about the details. I'm here to say this. I paused, feeling my voice catch, then pushed through it. I will not stay married to someone who uses my trust as cover for a second life. Hannah sobbed openly now, shoulders shaking. Jason, please, she begged. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll end it. I already did. I was going to tell you. You had months to tell me, I said quietly. You had so many chances, and you chose him over and over. The only reason we're standing here is because a stranger decided I deserved better. I saw it land, the realization that her carefully constructed narrative had crumbled not because of me, but because someone outside her script had refused to play along. Her mother started crying too. Chloe looked like she wanted to scream on my behalf. Liam stared at his hands, jaw clenched. My brother moved closer to my side, silent solidarity. What happens now? Her father asked, voice weary. I inhaled slowly, feeling the fullness of the moment, 12 years of love, routine, trust, betrayal collecting into the next sentence. Now, I said, I talk to a lawyer, I move out or she does, we divide things, we sign papers, we rebuild our lives separately. Hannah shook her head violently like she could physically reject reality. No, no, I love you, I made a mistake, a huge mistake, but I love you. Love doesn't look like this, I replied, gesturing toward the blank TV. Love doesn't hide in hotels and bars and studios financed by joint accounts. Love doesn't ask me to doubt my own sanity. And for the first time since this began, I saw something shift behind her eyes, something like understanding that this wasn't a temporary crisis or a fight we'd get over, but a line that had been crossed so completely there was no going back. She covered her face with her hands and broke down, not the neat crying of someone hoping for sympathy, but the uncontrolled sobbing of a person finally realizing the true cost of their choices. I didn't comfort her, not out of cruelty, but because I finally understood one thing with absolute certainty. My job was no longer to make her feel better about what she'd done. My job now was to take care of myself. To step out of the wreckage with my head up, my spine straight, and my story firmly in my own hands. And that, more than anything, was the beginning of the end, and also quietly the beginning of something else, my life on the other side of her lies. In the days after that dinner, the night everything finally cracked open for everyone to see, I found myself waking up into a life that felt strangely quiet, not empty, not broken, but quiet in a way that reminded me of the air after a heavy snowfall, the world muffled still, as if holding its breath, waiting for the next step. And I realized quickly that surviving betrayal isn't a dramatic sprint or a heroic rise. It's a long, steady walk away from something that doesn't deserve you anymore. The morning after the confrontation, I packed a single suitcase, just clothes, essentials, my laptop, nothing sentimental, and I left the house before Hannah even came downstairs. I didn't slam the door or leave a note. I didn't need cinematic closure because the closure had happened the night she watched her own lies displayed in front of the people she'd been trying to impress for years. I checked into a furnished month-to-month apartment downtown, overlooking the city skyline, a place with tall windows and empty countertops and none of the shadows of our marriage built into its walls. That first night alone, I didn't cry, didn't panic, didn't replay the confrontation on a loop. I just sat on the couch and breathed, long and slow, the way you do after surfacing from deep water. I met with a divorce lawyer the next afternoon, a sharp woman named Helen who didn't waste time with sympathetic platitudes. She spread the documents out neatly across her desk, our financials, the evidence folder, the screenshots, the tracking reports, and said, "You have a clean case. No children, clear fault. This will be straightforward for you." I appreciated the directness. For the first time, someone looked at the situation not through emotional wreckage but through strategic lines. We filed within a week. Meanwhile, Hannah sent texts, long ones, short ones, angry ones, desperate ones, apologetic ones, messages that oscillated wildly between begging me to come home, promising she'd end things with Ryan, insisting I still loved her, accusing me of humiliating her, thanking me for handling it calmly, asking for another chance, and sometimes saying nothing at all except, "Please answer." I didn't. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because every message came from a woman trying to claw her way back into a narrative where she wasn't responsible for the consequences of her choices. Silence wasn't revenge, silence was self-respect. One evening she showed up at my temporary apartment, eyes red, coat half buttoned, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her as I stepped out of the elevator, and for a moment we just stared at each other, two people who used to finish each other's sentences and now couldn't find a single word that didn't feel like a landmine. "Can we talk?" she whispered. I nodded but didn't open the door fully, letting her stand in the hallway under harsh fluorescent lighting that revealed every crack in both of us. "I ended it with him," she said, voice trembling. He blocked me after the dinner. I think he panicked." I didn't react. Her breakup with him wasn't my victory, it was simply a consequence of her exposure. "I know you won't take me back," she continued quietly, "but can you just tell me, when did you stop loving me?" Her voice cracked on the last word and something inside me softened, not toward reconciliation but toward closure. "I didn't stop loving you," I said gently. "I stopped waiting for you to love me the same way." Her eyes filled again, and she stepped back like the sentence itself pushed her. I'm sorry, Jason, she whispered. I'm sorry for everything. I nodded once, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. She left without asking to come inside. That was the last time we spoke face to face. The divorce moved quickly after that. Division of assets, signing papers, selling the house. I didn't want to live in a place built with both my love and her lies, so I let it go without a fight, grateful not to be tethered to memories I'd spent years trying to repaint. As for Ryan, I didn't seek him out. I didn't need a confrontation because men like him always face consequences without my help. His gym lost clients after whispers spread, the kind of whispers that travel fast when you betray the wrong person's spouse. Few months later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he had moved to another city for a fresh start. Fitting, meanwhile, I started my own version of a fresh start. Not in the cliché way, no reckless dating or dramatic reinventions. I simply returned to the things I'd neglected while trying to hold together a marriage that was already rotting from the inside. I reconnected with old friends. I took up hiking again, long trails through Colorado's quieter forests. I joined a photography group. I cooked meals in my new apartment and enjoyed the silence without mistaking it for loneliness. One evening, months later, as I walked along the Cherry Creek Trail at sunset, I realized something important. Betrayal hadn't ruined me, it had redirected me. Losing Hannah wasn't the collapse of my life, it was the end of a story I no longer had a role in. And somehow that felt like relief. People asked what happened between us, friends, coworkers, curious acquaintances, but I never indulged in the dramatic version. I just said we grew in different directions because the truth didn't need retelling. It had already been shown once, clearly enough for a lifetime. Then came the moment I didn't expect. I was grabbing coffee before work on a Friday morning when the barista handed me my order with a smile, and a woman behind me in line laughed because Cooper, who I'd brought along, was pawing gently at her leg, begging for attention. She knelt, scratched behind his ears, and said, "Well, you're clearly the highlight of my morning." Her name was Emily. She worked in urban planning. She loved dogs and hiking and had the kind of easy warmth that made conversations stretch effortlessly. I didn't ask for her number that day. I wasn't ready. But the universe has timing of its own because I ran into her again a week later at the same cafe, and this time the conversation came more naturally, lighter, freer, unburdened by the weight I once carried. It wasn't love, not yet, not anything close to it, but it was possibility. It was the first time in a long time I felt something open in my chest instead of close. And I realized something then. Healing isn't a moment you notice while it's happening. Healing is the moment you realize you've been walking forward without realizing the weight on your back has grown lighter with every step. Months later, the divorce finalized, my new life steady and calm. I woke up in my apartment on a bright Saturday morning, sunlight spilling across the bed, Cooper snoring softly at my feet, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not revenge, not triumph, not vindication, just peace. Hannah's betrayal had ended our marriage, but it hadn't ended me. If anything, it forced me to rebuild the version of myself that had been buried under years of trying to make something work alone. And I did rebuild, stronger, clearer, more grounded than before. Sometimes people betray you to make room for the life you were supposed to have all along. And as I stood at my window that morning, sipping my coffee, the city waking up beneath me, I understood one final truth. She broke the marriage, but I survived it. And survival, in the end, is its own kind of victory, the kind no one can take away.